Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again to our witnesses. Let me turn to Dr. Morgan. Dr. Morgan, public colleges remain the most affordable option for students, especially low-income, first-generation, and working students, but that affordability has increasingly been preserved by shifting costs onto students rather than sustain a public investment. So can you explain how state funding for public colleges has changed over the last few decades, and how those shifts translate directly into higher tuition and fees for students from a policy perspective? Why is sustained state and federal investment in public colleges one of the most effective ways to control costs without sacrificing quality or access?
Absolutely. So I'll just start by saying, public colleges and universities are really the backbone of our higher education system. This is where about 70% of individuals are going to school, and it's incredibly important to keep them accessible and affordable for all students. Traditionally, state appropriations have been the way that we have done that. So the combined mix of appropriations from state government and grant aid from the federal government have allowed students to attend public colleges at a very affordable rate. However, we've seen over time that when state budgets are squeezed, one of the first things to go is investment in public higher education. And as those state appropriations shrink, tuition goes up. And that's partly why I'm particularly concerned about what we've seen in H.R. 1, which is going to put that kind of pressure on state budgets and increase tuition costs for students.
Thank you, ma'am. The millions of borrowers are struggling with delinquency and default, not because they were irresponsible, but because the cost of college and the cost of living outpaced the wages. So what does the evidence show about how student loan default affects borrowers' financial stability, including credit access, housing, and unemployment? And looking ahead, what policies are most effective at preventing default before it happens, and what should Congress be doing now to support borrowers who are already distressed?
Yeah, delinquency on student loans has incredible negative effects on people's lives. There's both the punitive effects of the way that we collect student loans through wage garnishment and other measures in the federal student loan program. And there's also the effect of having a defaulted student loan on people's credit reports, which can, of course, impact their ability to get credit. But I think people don't always understand that it also impacts their ability to get a job, to get housing. So this can be really crushing for students. And for borrowers. I think, when you think about what the federal government can do here, as a former employee at the Department of Education, what I saw was that shift from delinquency to default is really the barrier where we want to focus our attention. If we can keep people in repayment on their student loans, we can keep them afloat, and we can keep them out of the default kind of bucket where it's incredibly difficult to pull them back out. So I think this is where income-driven repayment plans really become important.
Thank you. The Century Foundation has played a critical role in documenting and evaluating the chronic underfunding of historically black colleges and universities. I look forward to seeing that advocacy continue. I had the opportunity to work closely with Denise Smith during the HBCU Brain Trust last semester. I've taught 40 years on an HBCU campus. I went to a public university myself, but based on that work, why have public HBCUs continued to receive unequal treatment by their states, even after decades of legal settlements and federal attention? And how does that underinvestment show up for students in concrete ways?
Yeah, I really want to thank you for your advocacy on this issue. It's an issue that has been incredibly important to the Century Foundation because it's important to people in this country and to creating equitable access, not just to higher education, but to jobs. We know that HBCUs provide incredible support for Black students around the country and also have experienced unequal funding. And so it's incredibly important that we focus in on equalizing the funding for those schools so that students can experience the same outcomes as their peers.
So what should Congress expect from states and institutions to ensure that HBCU funding gaps are actually closed, not just acknowledged? And how can organizations like yours continue to play a role in holding systems accountable for delivering on that promise?
I think we need to persistently put the data in front of our leaders, not only at the federal level, but at the state level, to make sure that they can't walk away from these gaps that they've created and that they've allowed to foster over decades. To me, that kind of advocacy is really important from an organization like Century, and I appreciate the advocacy that we had from you and others in terms of the impact that has on
Thank you
students.
very much. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put in the record the college investor article, administrative bloat is false.
Without objection.
Thank you. Thank you very much.